Hello, Peyton here, and this is a brief commentary on a Christian movement in the United States known as the Christian Identity or Identity Christian Movement. This movement, it's not one particular organization, but the ideology behind a group of churches or organizations. Think of it the same way as an umbrella corporation overseeing its subsidiaries. The ideology of the movement's based on their interpretation of the Bible. So, similar to other groups throughout the world, when religion and politics is merged and then you add some extremist attitudes, people use their religious beliefs to justify their actions. The movement states that the survival and advancement of the white race is their primary goal. And unlike other groups in the United States, the Christian Identity movement promotes their views through biblical interpretation. So lots of their beliefs are in their doctrine that are based on Scripture. So there's so many of them that I've just picked a few of them out to discuss in this commentary. So, the first one that kind of ties in with their overall goal is their belief that they're the true Israelites, they're the true descendants of Jesus Christ, and that only the white race is the chosen race. And again, the survival and advancement of the white race is paramount. So to kind of tie into that, they're very much against race mixing, because that would be, one of the things they consider to be counter to their survival of the white race. They're also very anti-Semitic. They believe that Jews are the children of Satan. They're also against homosexuality and feel that homosexuality should be punished by death. These are just a few of the things that they've quoted Scripture to provide guidance for those on the doctrine. For the full set, you can visit the Christian Identity website or any of the groups or organizations that are associated with that movement, and they all pretty much have the same set of doctrine and guidelines and the same scriptures that are quoted. So they have an interpretation for a scripture for almost anything. So along with these items, the movement also believes that the rule of law and authority comes from God and no other. So this puts them at odds with many, state, local, federal government. Actually, from experiences I've heard about from people that have come into contact with some of the followers, the only law enforcement that they respect is a sheriff. And that's because that position is elected by the people. So they feel that if they didn't have a say or they didn't have input in that person, gaining that legal authority position, that it's simply not recognized by members of that group. I've been told by federal law enforcement officers that business owners have notified them that they're not allowed to carry their firearms into their establishments, even when they're on duty. So, they said since they don't recognize their authority, they weren't elected, that they weren't welcome to go into that establishment when they were on duty, and if they were, they could leave their firearm either in their car or they could leave it at the counter with one of the employees of the business. And some of this may seem extreme, but there's thousands of people that follow this movement, and it continues to grow. With there being so many organizations to choose from, it's easy for one to find a particular group to identify with. Also, by there being so many different organizations, it's difficult to track the actual number of followers. Estimates have been as high as 50,000 by some people, but without an actual registry and with people that don't want to be tracked as it is, any of those numbers that people throw out is simply going to be a guess anyway, because you have people that don't want to be tracked and don't trust the government, so there's really no way to get get an actual number for the members. But just because we won't understand the numbers doesn't mean that we can't make an assessment on the possible threats or the possible targets made by the followers. It may seem strange and extreme, but the first thing to realize, these groups identify with the divine. So they closely identify with Scripture and claim to have legitimacy based on the Bible. This appeal to the divine is very important to understand, and it's similar to groups in other part of the world when it comes to how they feel about others and actions they may take against others in the name of God or in the name of the Bible or in the name of, whatever divine being it is that's guiding them to take those actions. If a group believes that they're the true children of Christ, and any action taken is a divine action against the non-chosen because they pose a threat to them, people are capable of about anything. Seeing as how the movement is about the survival and advancement of the white race, any member of a race other than white is going to be a potential threat or a potential target. Race mixing is tied in here again. So these groups are against anything that they feel poses a threat to the survival and advancement of the white race. So this could be any individual person. It could be various places frequented by other races. And this opens the door for either planned or ad hoc attacks against people, establishments, establishments such as stores, restaurants, churches, as well as individuals' homes. The difficulty here is establishing a connection between the action taken and the movement. When you understand what they're against, you begin to look a little closer at the reported crimes and the way kind of crimes are reported on the news. And you can kind of start to see that maybe there's some possible ties to extremism, but since it is so difficult to make that tie and there's really no list, registry, it's really difficult to pick an actual event out and tie that in and say that is tied to one of these extremist groups, unless they want that to be out there. So also, along with the non-whites and the race mixing, they also feel that Jews, proponents of abortion as a means of birth control, and proponents of same-sex relationships are also targets. Again, we have individuals and facilities that may be at risk of attack. And these facilities may be synagogues, they could be doctors' offices or clinics, churches, or the people that support same-sex marriage. And it isn't just the couple that's married or in the relationship. It could be the people that are proponents, like the pastor that conducts the ceremony, or it could be the politician that even voted for the same-sex marriage in that state. So the potential threats for things that they don't particularly have a one set scripture that they quoted is their attitudes towards law enforcement and government imposed laws like taxes, and a couple of these items, just a couple that go against their ideology. Law enforcement, other than elective sheriff, is not recognized by their ideology. This belief can lead to confrontations. Just in a minor traffic stop can turn into a deadly encounter if someone feels that encounter is not legitimized by that law enforcement, if they don't recognize it, and we've seen that time and time again on the news. Who knows if it's actually related to one of these groups. It's definitely an extreme behavior, but unless someone can come out and say, yes, that person was a member of this and they took that action because they remember that group, it's really difficult to make that connection. So beyond just the local law enforcement, it also extends to the state and federal governments as well. With the belief that the white race is a supreme race and their commitment to the survival and advancement of that race, the current immigration issue also provides a particular set of potential targets. Many believe that the federal government is responsible for facilitating the movement of people from Central and South America to areas throughout the United States. And according to the extremists, the U.S. government is acting against the survival and advancement of the white race. This belief has led to some groups to threaten immigration officials or immigration facilities if the practice does not stop. And some of these targets include the officers themselves. It includes the offices, processing centers, transportation hubs, and checkpoints, just to name a few. They feel the same way about taxes as they do about the immigration issue. So really anything associated or tied into the IRS is a possible threat, which could also be why there's so many churches related to, the Christian identity movement just for the 501c status. And what makes this type of extremism so difficult to track is that there is no central leader for the entire organization. And this opens the door for a number of anything. Almost anything's possible when you have a leaderless type of organization or groups. And one of them's the lone wolf, the individual that plans and acts alone, but follows the ideology of a group. And it's and similar to other parts of the world, without a leader, many factions can be created. So like the lone wolf, this inhibits the tracking and monitoring of these groups. It also adds to the potential danger from the groups as well, since these groups may be competing to see which one is more radical. Also, without having a central leader, there's not one voice for the movement, but many, making communications with the group very difficult. And we've seen this, in other parts of the world where there's not one particular rule of law to follow, and there's not one particular voice that's going to guide everyone. And the similar connection or the parallel to make with that is what people say about some of the Islamic extremism that's going on right now. Is it's very difficult because there's so many different interpretations that it's really hard to kind of nail it down. There's not one particular speaker. Whereas with Catholicism, you have the Pope. You have one person that's going to come down and say, this is the direction of the church and this is what's going to happen. So the Islamic extremists don't have that central person to speak, and neither do the people that are identified with the Christian identity movement. It's really just kind of a free-for-all where people have this religion to fall back on, but really don't have one particular person in charge or one particular person providing that guidance to everyone as far as what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and when they're going to do it. So whatever the name or location of the organization, when religion and politics, political beliefs are combined with extremism, almost anything's possible. And we've seen this throughout history, and right now throughout the world. We have this same type thing going on with extremist behavior and religious beliefs all kind of mixed into one. And once a group believes that they're acting under divine direction, as are the groups associated with the Christian identity movement, the potential for acts against others is not only possible but also very likely. So thank you for your time, and please post any comments if you have any. Thank you.